another design that I made for the company Goldesi, and this is going to be showing you their Avance machine, which is an embroidery machine. So we have some thread spools. There's one that it comes off the nail and it is a spinner, so if you pull on the thread, the spool will spin and you can get a pretty good length of thread off of it. We have some really cool embroidery texture, which is, I'm sure, a technique that you wouldn't expect to see or would be surprised by. So definitely stay tuned and watch for that. I hope you like it, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
So we are going to begin by shortening the nail that is going to have that spinner on it. I'm going to use my e-file. If you try to just do it with a clippers, usually the plastic nail tip will crack or break, or it'll turn white. And since I don't want any of those things to happen, an e-file and a hand file are the best way to do that. And then I'm going to squeeze a little bit of an acrygel on top of the nail, putting a focus of the thickest part towards the free edge and then blending it back so that it's nice and thin and it tapers down so it isn't bulky looking all over. And then I'm going to grab my piece of wire and I'm going to press that into that acrygel. So try to get it as smooth as possible before you press the wire in, but then after it is, after you are happy with it, you're going to press that piece of wire in, hold it in place, and then as long as it's not going to move on you too much, try to blend the acrygel up and over the top of it. After that's been cured, you can buff it a little bit if you'd like to, but then apply a layer of gel polish over that whole nail and over the free edge, cure, and then a layer of top coat. I'm going to be using a matte gel top coat for this one. After that has been cured, then we're going to start sculpting our spool of thread. So I strung 4 bar beads onto a piece of wire, and the wire is just to hold them in place and make sure that they stay nice and straight. And I connected them just a little bit, kind of tacked them together with some clear acrylic, and then using some blue acrylic, I'm going to just be building up the center of the spool. So kind of sculpt over the top of the whole thing. It is very awkward because as you're sculpting, this is going to want to spin, which is a good thing because you want it to be able to spin freely. So it's kind of a balance of getting it to hold still enough as you're sculpting it and letting it maintain that movement. So just kind of take your time with it. Do it in several small beads. Don't try to do like one big bead or a couple big beads to completely cover up those inside little beads. You want to try to do slow and steady. Slow and steady wins the race with this one. So after you're happy with it and you have as many of those little sections covered up, then we're going to take and sculpt 2 circles on nail form backing with the same shade of blue. And then after you have kind of patted them out into the size that you want, take a dotting tool and make a hole in the middle. After they have their holes in the middle, you're going to glue them to the ends of your spool so that the hole in the middle lines up with the hole of the beads. After they're glued in place, hopefully they are going to cooperate for you. After you've got the first one glued, flip it over and then glue down the other one. Make sure you do not plug the hole of the bead or of that little end piece when you're gluing them down. You're going to take more acrylic, more of your blue acrylic, and you're going to really secure them. You don't want there to be any gaps or weird spaces, or you also don't want it to just be held down by the glue because that won't be very secure. So you're going to smooth it out on the first side and then you're going to flip this over. After you have both of them done and they're secured, you can string this onto your wire with the nail, or on the wire that's in the nail, and then you're going to cut off the excess, and then on the end, to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, use a little bit more of your blue acrylic and create a little stopper on the end of the wire so that your spool of thread cannot fall off. Once that's done, I'm going to take a piece of red thread and I'm going to attach it to the spool with some jewelry gel. After the piece has been attached, I'm going to make a line of jewelry gel going all the way down the whole spool, just one section, one line. And then I'm going to begin wrapping it with my red thread and just wrapping. The whole design for this one, it takes a lot of patience when it comes to working with thread, and especially for that embroidery texture. You just have to keep in mind that it might take a little bit of time, but the end effect is so cool and the texture is just so satisfying. It just feels really good. So after you have the first row of thread wrapped around your spool, you're going to do a second row. So add another little layer of your jewelry gel and then wrap it up again and do another section where you're completely covering up that jewelry gel. Do not make the jewelry gel too thick or it will like squeeze through the thread and come out and you're gonna have to use way more than you would have otherwise. But just make sure that you are wrapping it until it seems like it's pretty much coated, it's all covered up, and then you're going to cure this another time. After that has been fully cured, just set it to the side and then you can wrap as much string around it as you want that will be loose that you can pull. Now for the thumb, we're going to be making kind of a replica of an Avance machine. And so I'm going to start with a layer of white. This was white gel paint just to keep it nice and thin. And then using a dark blue gel polish, I'm going to be writing the Avance logo. As you are writing this, if you are concerned about keeping it so that you can make nice straight lines, this is something that I didn't do, but is a trick that I've been meaning to tell people and I just haven't. If you have a shiny nail, so like the background of this, that white gel paint cured with a nice shine to it. If you have a shiny nail and you want to make a nice straight line to base something off of, take and paint a stripe of matte top coat on the bottom edge or the top edge of what you're writing. So for this one, because the A and the V are taller than the rest of the letters, it'd be right along the bottom. And then you would have that line to, base all your letters off. And then after you apply this coat of matte top coat, it wouldn't have been seen. So now that we have that layer of matte top coat on there, I'm going to use a pencil and I'm going to just mark off 5 sections that go right along the top of this Avance logo, so that when I go to start making the little raised sections, that I have them evenly spaced. And I do not know what these raised sections are. If anybody has, any technical questions for how this machine works, I would happily direct you to talk to one of the lovely people at Coldesi. I can personally say that they are a very nice group of people and that they will, answer any questions you may have. And if you by any chance are actually interested in one of these machines, they are so cool. They will obviously help you with that as well. But even if you're just curious, I'm sure they would gladly answer any questions that you may have. So we're going to be making these little sections that kind of keep the thread, like I said, I don't know the technical name, but they keep the thread in line when the thread is coming off the spools and then going into the machine to be embroidered onto whatever it is that you're embroidering. So they're like the little guides. We're going to call them guides. So we've got five of these guides. So there's one in the center, and then we're going to be doing 2 to each side of that center one. Because there's going to be 4 spools of thread, we need to have 5 guides, because then there are 4 spaces between each one. There's, 1 space, but there's a total of 4. So that's going to give us the right number for our spools. To make the mini spools of thread that are going to go on that thumbnail, I'm going to take a piece of wire and just sculpt a little section on the end of it that is about the height that I want my spool of thread to be. Flatten off the end of it, kind of pat it around in a circle, and then sculpt a circle on a nail form backing and set that little wired end into that little bit that's on the nail form backing, and hold it there until it'll support itself, and then you can cut it off so that there's no extra wire. And repeat that process until you have all 4 spools that you're going to be using for your thread. If you are concerned about wrapping your thread between the spools, if it seems like they're going to be too tight, instead of attaching all of the spools at once as I'm doing, attach one, do the thread wrapping, attach the next one, do the thread wrapping, and so on and so forth. It would be a little more time consuming because you'd be switching gears and switching product lines, but if it seems like that would be easier for you, it may be quicker in the end. I had enough space between each of my spools to get the thread between easily enough, but if yours are a little bit tighter than mine are, you may have to do it individually. After you have them attached to the nail with just a little bit of clear acrylic, I am then going to attach them more securely with more of the blue, just going around the base of each spool of thread so that they are nicely attached. The other thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is that you are going to need 2 spools that are shorter than the other 2. The 2 that are shorter are going to be in the middle of the nail, and the 2 that are slightly taller are going to be on the edges. Add some jewelry gel down the side of your spool, and then grab your color of thread, and you're going to begin wrapping it. I did not secure just the end of my thread down first before I wrapped it the rest of the way. That would be a significantly easier process, and for me, I just felt like, I can do it, it doesn't matter, but I would probably recommend doing that. So the first one that I am going to wrap with thread is going to be the red color. I am using colors that are part of Avance's color scheme in their logo. So I'm going to be doing red and gray and a couple shades of blue. So then I'm going to take and I'm just going to wrap and drag and kind of hold that underneath the nail. Again, there's just a tiny bit of jewelry gel holding that in place at the tip of the nail. After I have that and I'm holding it nice and tight, I'm going to take my Flash Cure flashlight and I'm going to flash cure it so that it doesn't loosen as I put it into my lamp. Cut off the extra, fully cure it, and then you're going to start on the next color. So this is the light blue. Just going to keep wrapping it around, and then after you're happy with it, then you're going to do the same thing where you just kind of pull it down and make sure it goes between those 2 guides that it is scheduled to fit between on the nail. Secure it with some jewelry gel, and then you're going to repeat the process for the next 2 as well. If you're planning on doing just like a sewing theme design and you want to use some of these techniques for that, and you wanted to make these little spools of thread have the little stopper on both ends, what you'd want to do is just, after you cut it off of the piece of wire, after it has the stopper on one end, repeat the process and put a stopper on the other end. Then you're going to tuck the ends of the thread underneath the nail, secure them down. And now on a piece of paper, I'm going to be drawing a template to make my embroidery hoop. So I have a circle that I'm drawing out. If you wanted to make a circle that was perfectly circular and you didn't want to eyeball it and kind of do guesswork like I did, you would probably want to trace something, a brush cover, possibly a coin. You could say, trace a dime if you wanted to, whatever size. Just find something that's about the size that you're looking for and trace that. And then make a circle slightly larger, and then add the 2 handles. After you're happy with your template, you can place a piece of paper over the top of it, or I should specify nail form backing, not just any old piece of paper. Place a nail form backing over your template, and then use the color of acrylic that you want to use for your embroidery hoop to sculpt the hoop. As you are sculpting this, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, intend on filing it later, just because even the height of it, there's just going to be things that you're going to want to fix up. So if it's not perfect at this stage, that's okay, especially since it's something that's so big and you want it to be so perfect. Just trying to get it right off the gate is a little unrealistic. However, if you do it, congratulations, and give yourself a pat on the back because that is amazing. However, I don't get very worked up about things if I have to file them. I'm always like, oh, okay, then they'll be perfect, because if they're close, I usually don't file them, because then they're close enough, they're good enough. But if they're way off base, like, ooh, this definitely needs filing, I'm almost a little glad, because then I know that by the time I'm done filing, it will look so smooth and so just polished that, it's kind of worth the time anyway. So that's my philosophy on file or not to file. Add the side pieces, like where the hinge would be on your embroidery hoop if it was actually like the 2-sided clasping hoop. And then we're going to take and file this. Surprise, surprise. So I'm going to take a hand file and kind of perfect that outside shape of it a little bit, but then you won't be able to use the hand file to file the interior circle. So if you do not own an e-file, that is the one place where you're going to want to take more care when you're sculpting, is the inside circle. However, I do own and love my e-file, so I'm going to use that to just file and smooth out the inside edges of that. And then you can also take, and if you want to, just file over the surface of it to get it so it's nice and flat, which is what I'm doing. Like I said, if I'm going to get out my file, I'm going to file everything because it's just my process. Back to your nail form backing, sculpt your piece of material. I'm going to be using white and you're going to use acrylic, and just sculpt a shape that's nice and smooth and flat. Before you start patting out your acrylic, let it just cure and polymerize right where it is, then press it out into your shape. Kind of tuck in the edges. I don't think it has to be anywhere near a perfect square or circle, but you just want it to not look quite as raggedy on the sides. Let that turn totally matte. You can see this shine is just kind of starting to dissipate. Once it is completely matte, like mine is now, you're going to take and you're going to slide your brush underneath it, pick it up, set it on top of your embroidery hoop, press it down with your finger, a gloved finger, so it goes into the hoop, and then you're going to immediately tuck the edges down and put that on the nail. Use some clear acrylic as glue, set that on your nail, and then there you go. You have your embroidery hoop with the material tucked into it. After that has been attached to the nail, then you can go through and you can do the painting of whatever your Avance machine is embroidering onto this material, which I'm just going to say is like a piece of like a shirt, a t-shirt. And I'm going to be still using the colors that are part of the Avance color scheme. And so I'm using gel polish for this that I felt matched my thread color very well. So I have an A, and then I'm going to do an S. This is for a logo that the machine could be embroidering on like a company shirt. So we've got the A and then the S. As you are painting these, this part is not going to be done with the thread. This is the one place in this design that we have kind of that embroidery texture, that look, that feel, without the use of thread. So I've got just a first start out with a base of color for each of the letters. Then you're going to go through after that's been cured and you're going to grab a secondary color, so a darker shade of red, a slightly darker shade of blue for each of the blues, and you're going to be adding a shadow on these. Embroidery thread is very shiny. It's like hair. It's very shiny. It's very silky looking, and so it has these highlights to it. So after you have the shadows done, if you want to take it a step further, you could highlight this. Otherwise, you can just keep going. So now I'm using a crystal gel, which is a 3D puffy gel. Sometimes it's called crystal gel, sometimes it's called puffy gel, depending on the company. They have different names for it, but it is a paintable consistency. It's quite thick, but you can use it with a brush. That's how you use it. You don't use it like with, it's not like 4D gel that you can roll with your fingers. It's definitely sticky, and it just holds its shape. So add a little layer of the direction of the thread, and then you're going to flash cure it, and then you're going to add a couple more layers so that it gives you that thread texture. And if you feel it, it has a similar feeling to the thread. And with the little layers underneath it, with the shading on the letters, it really brings it out and does give you kind of that replica of the embroidery look. If you wanted to do all of the embroidery in this design with that technique, you certainly could. It has, its benefits for sure. It's all nail products if that's something that means anything to you. Otherwise, you can use the thread. I liked the mix myself. So we're going to take and we're just going to be applying a little bit of jewelry gel in two corners of the side handle pieces of the embroidery hoop, and then a layer of glossy gel top coat over the top of it. And then you're going to press some caviar beads into those little bits of jewelry gel to act like the rivets. Now on a silicone mat, we're going to paint a section of top coat, of clear top coat that's really flexible, and we're going to peel it off, and then we're going to cut that into the size and shape that we want our embroidered sections to be on the remaining nails. So on the pinky nail, we're going to just make one long skinny section that's going to go down the center of the nail that will have that embroidery texture. So I'm going to use my little scissors to cut that. You're going to want this little base piece that you're cutting to be slightly smaller than what you want in the end, because when you start wrapping it with thread, it is going to get a little bulkier. So after you have it and you've got basically the size you want, including making sure that it fits around the cuticle area, then you're going to paint it with a base coat of your gel colors that are similar to your thread colors. So paint red under where you want red thread to be, blue under where you want blue thread to be. You kind of get the idea of where I'm going with this. And after you have those bases all painted and they're all filled in and they've been cured, you're going to take some jewelry gel and you're going to outline the section of each color. So outline the red. You don't have to fill it in the middle, but just kind of create a little fence with the jewelry gel. And then you're going to take a red thread and you are going to wrap this little base piece around and around and around until it is basically entirely covered with thread. If tiny little bits of the underneath color stick out, that's fine. That's why we painted it with the underneath color, so that if a little bit does show, it isn't really going to be noticeable. After you have the first section done, you're going to go through and you're going to do the next one. So obviously after red, we have blue. The great thing with after you've done the red section is that you have a better handle to hold onto this little piece with, which in this case, I'm using my tweezers. I do not like to use my fingers to hold onto these little things because I end up dropping them or I get stuck to them or whatever might happen, it'll happen. So you're going to do the red section and then you're going to wrap it with the blue and just keep wrapping, keep going around and around and around until it is covered. Once it's covered, secure the end of the thread down, flash cure, cut off the extra. You can leave the tails of the thread for right now. You can go through and clean those up later. Just try to get this base of everything covered for right now. On the last section, it is going to be the most difficult because it is more narrow, and in this particular type of a thing, the more narrow it is, the more difficult it is because the thread, for me at least, kind of wanted to hop off, and all of a sudden I would be wrapping it and then I would lose concentration and I'd either hold it a little too tight or a little too loose and a whole bunch of the thread would unravel and I'd go, oh no. So just, don't lose focus. Keep track of what you're doing. After they have all been attached and flash cured and fully cured and they're not going anywhere, cut off the extra bits of thread, make sure it fits well onto the nail, and then we're going to attach it down. We're going to place a little bit of jewelry gel down the center of the nail, and then this was where I was being silly. I thought I could quickly just tack those little bits of thread down underneath and put it on the nail. I could not. You have to tack the thread down first, flash cure it, and then put it onto the nail. But once those are all attached, they're all those little loose pieces of thread, you have your jewelry gel down the center of your nail. Take this piece and you're going to hold it in place. Do not press it down so that it seems like it's fully secured. Leave it so that you can see underneath it a little bit, so that when you go to cure it and you cure from sides left and right and kind of cure all the way around, it will cure the jewelry gel that is underneath the thread piece. You don't want it to remain where there's a lot of wet gel underneath, so don't fully seal it down. Make sure that it stays kind of flat so it doesn't wrap around the curve of the nail yet. Wrap the end of this little embroidery piece around the very tip of the nail and then hold that down. All of these steps that we're taking to make this embroidered look nail are somewhat tedious, somewhat time consuming, but oh so satisfying, because when it gets done, then it's just so cool and you can run your finger down it and it feels like embroidery. I really did enjoy it. So then we're going to take and we're going to be doing our little microphone that is the other part of the CAS logo. So I'm going to take and I'm going to cut it out of that piece of the gel polish top coat that I had made on my silicone mat. So it's the same kind of just base like we did for the other embroidery nail. carefully cut it out. This one has a couple more shapes to it. It's a little bit more difficult. If you are planning to replicate this design or do something similar, start with the easier one before you go to a more complex shape so that you don't have to worry about surprises. You get a better feel for it and you have a better understanding of how to hold the thread and how tightly to hold it. And for this one, we're going to do red for the foam of the microphone, gray for the cord, and then the handpiece is going to be yellow. Same system, add your jewelry gel and then wrap it with thread. Like I said, this one is definitely a little more complex, so you're going to have to give yourself a little bit more patience, but once you get it all wrapped up and it is, completely covered with your thread, it's basically the same thing. We start with the red, then go on to the yellow and then the gray. And this part I didn't really show for the other nail, but after you're attaching it to the nail, you want to take and put just a line of jewelry gel down the edges and hold down each edge and cure them individually so they really stick down. Once you're done wrapping your microphone, you're going to attach it to the nail. So we're going to do the middle first, just like before, and then do those little lines of jewelry gel down the edges, hold them down, and cure those when you're holding it tightly. Like I said, I did do that for the other nail as well. I just did not manage to record it apparently. So we kind of hold those down. Once those are all secured, all the edges are nice and tight, cut off the end of a sewing needle so that you have a little bit of length plus the eye. And then after you have that done, dip the end of it that's been cut into jewelry gel and then place it right along the edge of that embroidered microphone. And that's going to make it look like you are in the process of embroidering the microphone and sewing it in place. Add some gel top coat over the design or around the design if you have a little bit of a messy look from the jewelry gel. String a piece of thread that you used for the coloring through the eye of the needle, and then you can want to just secure that in place with jewelry gel, and this design is done. There is so many different little effects in this, and creating the process for making those embroidery nails was definitely a mental exercise. I am very happy with the way that they turned out, and that little spool of thread is so much fun. I hope you guys like it as much as I do. If you are interested in any of Dessi's information, or if you missed the past two designs that I created for them, I will put many links in the description box below. They have a YouTube channel that has a whole bunch of really satisfying videos that I once just went through and watched a bunch of them, because watching how the machines work I think is just really relaxing. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out, and I will see you all next time. Bye!